Yes, Mr. Ferdinand, thank you for joining us on Diplomatic Channel. It's just been a few days since the formal departure of Britain from the EU. How's it going so far in London?
Oh, thank you very much, Amarachi. My strong feelings about the situation right now to do with the fact that we've now left the EU is quite, mixed, really. Mixed in the sense that it's so sad that we had to actually leave the EU, an EU that we have to actually sever our relationships with the EU, a relationship that spans a period of more than 47 years, and where we're quite intertwined politically, economically, even legally, and constitutionally. We've now had to leave this very, very powerful economic union, and it's sad in the sense that it's just going to be it's going to be affecting the lives and livelihood of nearly about 60 million people. Yes, we've now left, but we also now need to take on board the fact that the consequences of our leaving to do with the welfare and the livelihood and the lives of the British people in the next, 1-2 decades could be quite dire indeed. Sad, yes, we need to move on. We need to do what we need to do to move on as a country. But I don't think we are quite united at all. As much as Boris Johnson was going on about the fact that he would want to unite the whole country behind a strategy after leaving the EU, it's clear to all concerned that the confusion, the convulsions and the commotions, caused by this Brexit palaver in the last 3.5 years, it will take a very long time for that to heal.
And with the celebrations going on Friday, the way and the attitude with which Britain formally divorced itself from the European Union, you would think that the EU was such a bad union for Brexit, was never fair, to the country. You think that that was the situation. And then the real work begins now because a trade deal has to be forged within 11 months for that transition period. Can this be compared to going back to pre-EU days for Britain?
They cannot. And I repeat, there would not be any pre-EU days at all for the UK. When we joined the EU, roughly about 47 years ago, I think in 1972, the European Community Act, when we actually joined the EU then, the facts on ground and circumstances to do with the world order then was so different from what we have right now. Now, we have a country, we're only about 60 million, and we decided, unilaterally to leave one of the most, in fact, I would say the most powerful economic bloc in the world, where you have countries like Germany, France, and so many other European countries, sharing things together and doing things together. We decided to leave that very particular bloc. So indeed, the celebration, yes, they were celebrating on the 31st. Some people were, but for the majority of people, I don't think it was any cause for celebration at all. I don't think it was any cause for celebration for the Scots, who actually voted 64% to remain in the EU. I don't think it was celebration for even the Northern Ireland, who that also decided to remain in the EU. I don't think it's celebration for millions of people who do not know where they are going or where they are coming. They don't know what's going to be happening to the trade deal to be negotiated in the next 12 months. They don't know what's going to be happening to the relationship we have, our science and technology, the relationship we're going to be having with the EU after, if we succeed in negotiating a very good agreement by the end of the year. We do not know what's going to be happening to our security. We do not the security of Europe vis-a-vis the UK. We don't know what's going to be happening to the data system that we all share together. So we're in the limbo right now. The precariousness of what will be happening now that we've left is so clear for everyone to see.
Could you just briefly speak about, those who will be losing jobs, those who worked in the EU losing jobs, as well as, Britain's relations with Nigeria and its other allies post-Brexit, and if the EU was such a bad organization to be part of, was the relationship not fair between Britain and the EU while it was in the Union?
Well, there are so many Brits working in EU institutions, and I want to believe that whilst they were working in the EU, they under the Treaty of Rome, they had that right to be able to remain in the EU countries to work, and within that transition, the transitional period, if it's the case that any Brit who was working in Europe, in the EU, has lived in that very particular EU country for about 5 years, that person could actually apply for settlement. So there won't be any case of that person losing one's job. And
Okay.
even if you are less than 5 years living in any of the EU countries within that transitional period, you could also still apply for that leave to remain within that EU country to make up the 5 years. So I do not think it would affect them in the next 12 months. But after we leave the EU, if the Brits within the EU countries have not made any application for leave to remain in those countries under the Treaty of Rome, that it still applies until we eventually leave in December 2020, those people could actually lose their rights. Then concerning, you mentioned the kind of relationship we're going to be having with Africa, Nigeria. The situation right now is, even if the British government and British companies would want to trade with Nigeria, my sound advice to African governments, particularly Nigeria, is this: Africa is one of the rich, is a bounty of very, very rich resources and human resources. I think well over about 2/3 of the world's resources reside in Africa. So if we're going to be doing any trade deal at all with the UK, we should be rest assured and press upon the UK that any business you do in Africa, particularly in Nigeria, where you're going to be setting up businesses and making profits in Africa, in Nigeria, that very particular opportunity should be reciprocal. You should also allow Africans to do the same in your own country. We should actually hold firm, stand firm, and make the very strong case that, look, you cannot just come to Africa and say you want to set up business and make money just because of the fact that you are now out of the EU. You would have to actually allow Africans to do the same thing within the UK.
I will leave it at that, Mr. Fadimo. Thank you again for speaking with us on Diplomatic Channel.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you.
This is our stop on the program this week. As usual, I look forward to your comments. The addresses to reach me on are on your screen. I am Amarachi Ubani. Thanks again, and see you next time.